Hello and welcome to the BookTube channel, Jack in the Book Stack, where I talk about a wide variety of book genres and the bookish lifestyle. Today I am reading some Brandon Sanderson. I read the original Mistborn trilogy in 2022. I read book 1 in July 2022. I did a video on it. I loved this trilogy. It was truly incredible. This was like one of my first very high fantasy reads and I was hooked. I really liked it. It solidified the fact that I can be a fantasy reader. I like Brandon Sanderson's writing. I want to continue in his whole Cosmere universe. So the next logical step is to pick up Era 2, and I have been procrastinating reading this because it takes place 300 years after that first trilogy, but it's the same magic system. But I love the characters so much in Mistborn Era 1, reading Mistborn Era 2, I didn't know if it would feel the same. The other reason I wanted to kind of put it off is I am reading and collecting these UK paperback editions. These are the ones I'm reading. I think they are exquisite. And the fourth book in this, The Lost Metal, came out late 2022. But it's not in this edition yet. And okay, Amazon bamboozled me because it said that it was coming out in June 2023. So that's why I picked this month to read this installment of this series. And it's not out. It's not out. It looks like on another website it comes out later this year, but that's okay. I think what I'll do is I'll read these 3 and then listen to the audiobook for The Lost Metal. So that's what I want to do. I'm really nervous to see how this is going to go, but I will do a spoiler-free review of each book. I'll tell you a little bit about the plot, the characters, the magic system, which I'm assuming is going to be the same, and the different tones and themes that I pick up on. So I am going to start off with this one. This is The Alloy of Law. So this is technically book 4 in the Mistborn series, but it's book 1 in the Wax and Wane Mistborn Era 2. I don't know how to refer to these things, okay? I'm new here. I'm just trying to figure it out, but that's what I'm gonna do. Let's go ahead and get started. I love this graphic of the newspaper article that he's looking at to investigate some recent robberies and hostage situations. So cool when books include visual elements like this. I just finished The Alloy of Law. Yes, I read this book all in one sitting. I cannot wait to talk to you about it, but right now I just gotta say, this was incredible. I finished The Alloy of Law and I am so excited to talk to you about it. First of all, let me tell you about the plot so I can give you a spoiler-free idea of what this book is about. So it does take place 300 years after Mistborn Era 1. So 300 years after Vin, Ellen, Sazed. So it is a very different setting. There are railroads and skyscrapers, and some people have started to get vehicles or cars, but there's a lot of people still riding horses. So that's a little bit different, and the setting does take on like a Western kind of a tone. So that is the setting that I'm imagining here. And this, for the plot, it's very high fantasy. We still have lots of magic, which I'll dive into in a second, but this is kind of like a like a sheriff and then bad guys robbing banks kind of situation. Like that's the kind of the setting that we're going for here. Let me dive a little bit more into the characters because that will also outline the plot for you. So we have Wax and Wayne. Wax used to be kind of like a sheriff. He's this lawman that has this world-renowned reputation for fighting crime. And he's kind of like the sheriff, and then his deputy is named Wayne. And they both have magical abilities, which I will get to in a second. But Wax has just moved back into town. He was on the outskirts of town, but now he's back in town, kind of entering into society. He's taking over his family's estate, handling the finances. He is focusing more on finding a wife, saving the finances, and staying out of trouble. He knows he shouldn't be doing the whole crime fighting thing anymore, so he's trying to abstain from that. But as he's back in town, he can't help but hear all these stories about these robberies hitting the trains or hitting certain events. And they're very mysterious because these robbers aren't really robbing. They're not stealing anything. They're taking one hostage, and it's always a female. And nobody else is hurt. It hasn't gotten violent at all, but it's just all very mysterious. So he can't help but getting dragged back into this world. He attends an event, a high society event, and this event becomes a target. And so things escalate from there. So I love the characters in this sense. I love the banter between Wax and Wayne because they've been working together for so long. And Wayne doesn't want Wax to like be retired from the whole crime fighting thing. So he's trying to convince him to come back in. We are also introduced to a female side character named Lady Marseille. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but she embodies all the things that I loved from Sazed in Mistborn Era 1 because she exudes this power in intelligence and book smarts, and she can recite definitions and research and statistics like that. And she has so much background information. She can hold her own with the guys and against the bad guys. She's powerful and incredible, and yet still slightly awkward because she blushes all the time. She's uncomfortable around Wax because she knows of his reputation and she idolizes him. So she has this awkwardness that's also very charming, and she is definitely my favorite character in the book. The magic system is exactly the same in this world as with Mistborn Era 1. You have allomancy, where people with certain powers can pull on certain metals. They can pull and push to kind of alter their movement through the world, and they can increase and decrease their strength. There's different abilities, the different magic stuff. A new magical element was introduced in this one that I don't think was in the first trilogy, and that was the speed bubble. This is an ability of Wayne where he can create a bubble around like limited space and include other people in it, where it speeds up time so much that everything outside the bubble is moving incredibly slow. It's really cool how they use this for in their fights, in the high action scenes, but also to have private conversations. Love the speed bubble element. It is difficult for me to follow the complex magic in these fast-paced action scenes when they're pulling and pushing on all these different powers and abilities to fight each other. I do find it very difficult to follow. It's very complex for me, but I just have to read slow. And there's a glossary in the back, which I showed you, that is incredibly helpful for these types of situations. What surprises me the most in The Alloy of Law is the change in tone from the first 3 books in the whole Mistborn world. It is much more lighthearted. I think the banter between Wax and Wayne really helps support that. It was funny at times, the way they kind of give each other a hard time. I really loved that element, and that lightheartedness made it a great escape read. It was not too heavy at all. That paired with the mystery that they were diving into and kind of like the plot twist within that kind of like Western setting, all these things gave to a totally different tone. And not that I didn't like the tone in Mistborn Era 1, but Mistborn Era 2 is set up to be very, very different. And I think that's cool. I think it's really cool that Brandon Sanderson did it. This definitely has its own distinctive personality so far because of this change in tone. And it fits my mood. I cannot tell you how much I needed this escape. This is exactly what I needed. this kind of arrogance, this confidence in her characters, while still being incredibly likable, is exactly what I've been looking for. Incredible tone, really makes this book special. For an overview, I think you can tell that I loved this book. This was the exact escape I didn't know I needed. I mean, I kind of knew I needed it, but this is what I've been looking for. That like charming arrogance, that banter, that lighthearted tone, but a complex magic system and a mystery and little plot twists within the mystery. Incredible. Incredible. I'm so excited to continue the series, so I am going to do just that and start the next book.
All right, I just finished Shadows of Self. Oh my gosh, that was so action-packed, particularly at the end, and I did not see that plot twist coming.
I finished Shadows of Self yesterday, and okay, it held up. I loved it as much as I loved the first one. Probably more because we had more of a foundation set. So book one ended not necessarily on a cliffhanger. The situation in book one was resolved, but an overarching storyline was introduced that picked up a little bit in book two. Like the overarching theme still existed, but I think this is roughly a year later, I think. And so that's still outstanding, but there is a new plotline in this one. We start off with this guy, and he is like the brother or the cousin of the mayor. He's related to the mayor. And this guy is into some shady stuff. And he is having a shady event with some shady characters being involved. And this is all in chapter one. I'm not spoiling anything. This like kicks off the book. But then there is an attack at his event and people are falling. And he goes to a safe room and he thinks like he's safe and I don't know what's going on out there. And all of a sudden he realizes he is not so safe. And the mystery is really around that event. What I loved about this book so much, it had me squealing, is it pulled so many elements from Mistborn Era 1. So I mentioned that Era 2 takes place 300 years after the events in the first trilogy. And in this one, those events, it's almost like a religion now, right? Like that is a religion, that is the reputation that kind of happened from all the events in the first trilogy. I keep wanting to point over here because they're like right here. So it's kind of like a religion, which is like a really fun element because like Vin was so human to me because I read her story. So to see her as like a legend, as like a religion is so interesting. So the religious aspect was really cool, but so many other elements were pulled from the first trilogy. And I don't want to spoil it because it's a huge part of the plot line and I was squealing and excited when I found out because I was surprised. But so many things are back and I feel like comforted almost. Like it's not the same and the tone remains similar to book one, like that lighter, kind of funny, sarcastic aspect rather than repeating the tone of Era 1. But there's so much familiarity in this one and so much nostalgia, even though I read that other trilogy like a year ago, less than a year ago. I'm nostalgic for 2022. But yeah, there was so much that made me so happy and there were like new spins on it. So I really loved that element. I still love our female main characters, or Lady Marasi. I'm still having a hard time pronouncing her name. She is still in this and she's awesome, and she is like a feminist icon. She's talking about how she's a constable now. She's working with the detectives. She's having a hard time with professional jealousy, like some of her colleagues being jealous of her, but it's because she's so smart and she's so good at what she does. And I love seeing those that appreciate her. And there's also a scene where she has to, I think she has to ride a horse, but she's like wearing a dress or something, and she's having this inner monologue about how her male colleagues just wear the constable uniform and it's easier for them to move around, but she loves wearing dresses. She loves being a girly girl. And so she kind of has a conversation about that, and I thought it was awesome. Like, that's why I say she's like a feminist icon, I feel. Not that she doesn't have to deal with a lot of discrimination or challenges, but just how she deals with them and points them out and overcomes them. And she's just a badass. So I love her. And there's another female in this one that I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to say who it is or anything, but we spend a little bit more time with her and how smart she is. She's like socially smart, and I love how she maneuvers those scenarios. Very, very intelligent. And another character that I think leans a little bit more feminine, kind of like straddles the line between feminine and masculine, that I kind of liked. And I just love this. I love this book so much. I can't think of like all the amazing things I want to say about it because there's so many. It really kept me engaged just as the first one did, mostly because of that tone and also the mystery, the magical elements, and the nostalgia to Mistborn Era 1. 5 stars, easy. I want to say I can't wait to see what happens in the next book, but now I'm starting to get scared because 2 5 stars in a row, I don't know, something's gonna go wrong. I feel like something is on the horizon that's going to break the streak and break my heart. But there's only one way to find out, so I'm gonna dive into the next book.
I know that I am very easily influenced. So I know that I cannot watch booktube videos until after I finish a book and after I record my thoughts on it. So last night I had already filmed my review of Shadows of Self, so I looked up videos of it, and I was watching this one by Murphy last night. And first of all, I love her channel. I've been a fan for a while. But seeing her enthusiasm for this book was so infectious. I absolutely loved it. And she was just so excited, so happy about it. We shared a lot of similar thoughts, except for she didn't like my girl, Marcy. That was not her favorite character. She liked Wayne, which I like Wayne too, but my girl, Marcy, didn't get too much love from Murphy. That's okay, but I love this video so much. So if you want to see a great spoiler-filled reaction to this book, definitely check out Murphy's channel. And she has other reviews as well. I'll definitely be checking out her review on the other book, and then she has a review on the whole Mistborn Era 2 series, but I will save that for when I am finished myself.
Finished the Bands of Mourning. This one takes place 6 months after the events in Shadows of Self, and with that ending, there was something that could have caused a huge depression in one of our characters, and you know, it kind of did, but Brandon Sanderson chose, in this installment, not to sit with the depression, which would have really given it a heavier tone. We still acknowledge that this character is battling that depression and the difficulties of that event, but we're not sitting with them through those emotions. And I kind of like that. There were events in Mistborn Era 1 that caused one of our characters to be really, really depressed. And it was a beautiful depiction of that, but we're doing something different here. And we're keeping with this lighter tone while still having an engaging plot, and I really appreciated that. Wax is still an amazing lawman, very skilled at what he does, very arrogant as well. And that's okay, that's kind of one of the reasons I appreciate him. But I do notice that all of these supporting characters, like, their primary job is to just handle him. I do kind of wonder how many of the characters are being truly, authentically themselves, because they are also so concerned with handling him, watching out for him, dealing with him, maneuvering around him, right? So that he can do what he does. And that's a very interesting vibe that I picked up on this one. Not that I dislike Wax, I just kind of acknowledge that everyone is very much just a handler of him. There is a romantic pairing in the Bands of Mourning that I actually really liked. It's not a pairing that is based on romance or love, but it is based on respect. Respect for each other and their strengths and their weaknesses and the considerations that they need in order to thrive and be themselves, be truly themselves. And I really, really love this pairing. I mean, I'm a romantic at heart and by nature, and this pairing was more logical, but just seeing this foundation of respect for each other was something I really liked witnessing. Marcy still remains a fantastic character, but really Milan is growing a lot more on me. And in the last book, Shadows of Self, she was very much like a voice of reason on humanity that I found really insightful and really, really enjoyed. But in the Bands of Mourning, she was awesome still, but she was even more hilarious. She had so many breakthrough moments where I was laughing out loud, and I really, really enjoyed her character. So I think Milan is my favorite character in this book this time. Although Wayne always is like a very close second favorite character because he's hilarious. He is so funny. His character is so funny. He really is the star of the show. I know that Wax is like the big bad lawman, but Wayne, oh my gosh, yeah, he is the star of the show, and he's just not this silly buffoon. He actually has some substance and depth to him as well with some of the things that he deals with. So I really like his presence a lot too. I didn't mention him too much when I was reviewing the other two books, so I need to give him his due because he is what's driving this tone for me and making me laugh out loud while I'm reading. Like, he is the comedic relief, but not like a jester. He has some substance and strength. He's very powerful as well. So I really enjoy Wayne, but I just like Milan a little bit better. Steris is probably the most self-aware, emotionally in control, analytical character that I have ever read. I cannot think of someone that is more so than Steris. And I really like her as well. I really appreciate who she is. I can relate to her in so many ways. Silly things like how she likes to make a list, and she always thinks of the worst case scenario so that she can have like a backup plan for it. That is totally something that I do. And you could just be prepared. You're not caught off guard by things. But then when she is caught off guard, when things don't go as predicted, it really unsettles her because she didn't think of it and wasn't prepared for it. And I am not good with like the unpredictable. So I actually relate to Steris a lot, but I'm not as cool as she is. Like, she is super intelligent. She's super cool. She is who she is. And she has no problems with that, like what her weaknesses are. She, like I said, is so self-aware. She knows that she's not the strongest, or she doesn't add the most value in this group of people because she's never shot a gun or been in battle or dealt with these types of villains before. She's dealt with corrupt people before, but not villains in this sense. And so she's very realistic about her abilities, and yeah, really, really like her. The magic in this one expanded even more, and I'm continued to be interested with the role that guns play with allomancy, which is all based on metals, right? The allomancers ingest metals and then they can burn them to do different things. And, you know, most of the time you can like push or pull on the metals to like move yourself, right? That's kind of the whole gist of it. So guns introduce a whole new element of the metal to these stories, as they didn't exist in the first trilogy, because that was 300 years in the past. There weren't guns as weapons. So really interesting how that continues to play a role, something really fascinating. There were new elements to this magic, or new, I don't know how to describe it without spoiling it, new uses or new abilities to use this magic that was really engaging for the plot. I really liked the Bands of Mourning. I'm liking all of them. I think so far still Shadows of Self Book 2 blew me away the most. So I don't know if I feel I liked this one a little bit less just because, like, comparison, right? Like, really, when I think about this series so far, Mistborn Era 2, I'm thinking about the events in Book 2. But this one still kept momentum going, even if it was a little bit slower momentum, but still really enjoyed it. So now I just need to pick up the fourth and last book in this series. So excited to see the conclusion to the story. I hope it's a good conclusion. I hope it wraps up. I hope there's no like major cliffhangers. Oh, one way to find out. I finished The Lost Metal, or book number 4 in Mistborn Era 2. I listened to the audiobook for this one, as I mentioned, because the physical copy is evading me because I insist that I get the UK paperback to match the rest of my collection. But it turns out the narrator was pretty awesome, I feel. There were different voices for each character, and in particular when it comes to Wayne. Wayne loves to pick up accents. He collects accents from different people, and the narrator did a really good job capturing this along with all the various characters. So the audio experience was pretty awesome. The Lost Metal picks up 6 years after the events in the Bands of Mourning. Wayne is a constable. Some of our characters are enjoying the family life. Some are finding their way in their careers and finding their place, leveraging their strengths. So it's nice to check in with the characters now that some time has passed and things have been relatively calm. What was interesting is the change of the direction in the plot, and obviously I can't say that much because I don't want to spoil it. This is book 4 in this installment of Era 2, so I don't want to spoil it, but it did have much more of a political plot, much higher stakes, very typical fantasy that I'm finding where like the world is at stake, right? Like the bad guy wants to take over the world kind of thing. So that honestly made it hard for me to pick the book up. I actually really enjoy politics in books, so I don't know what it was in this one that made it difficult for me, if it was just such a shift I mean, we've always been going this direction, but I just I found myself not really caring about it all that much. But the plot did tie everything together, everything that happened even back in book 1, it came together. There was another awesome element of nostalgia in the Lost Metal of Era 1, so I enjoyed that. And things are still left, well, things are resolved. There's definitely no cliffhanger, but I can see how a future installment might pick this up. And looking at GoodReads, it actually talks about the next installment, and I'm sure this is common knowledge, but this is just where I saw it, that the next installment is going to be much further in the future than Era 2. I'd have to say The Lost Metal, while it tied things together quite nicely, while I loved the character arcs that happened here, the plot was not my favorite, and this is probably one of my lesser favorite books of the Era 2 series. Speaking of the character arcs though, I really love the journey that everyone went on, and I have a question for those that have read these books. Do you consider Wayne a main character? Because Wax is, I think he's intended to be the main character, but you spend time in the perspective of so many different people that I feel like Wayne is a main character. So if I wanted to add him to my list of nominees for my 2023 favorite leading males, would that count, or is that cheating? But I'd have to say, with all the humor that Wayne contributes, but also the depth of his character, all the awesome quotes that he has, the wisdom he has too, and how he looks after his friend Wax, how he partners with Marcy, I think he has taken the spot as my favorite character at the end of this series. Marcy was my favorite kicking off because I just loved her as a feminist queen, and I do really like her journey, the journey that she went on and where she ended up. I really loved Steris. I think she's the one that I related to the most, with her worst case scenario planning and keeping lists and everything, and her analytical nature and her self-awareness. I loved her too. And Milan I mentioned as well, I really liked. Didn't get as much of Milan in this book, which was a little bit disappointing, but really I think Wayne is my favorite character at the end of this, even though there's so much to appreciate from these other characters. Except for Wax, because he never really became a favorite. He was never on my short list of favorite characters. And he is the lawman, the hero, right? But I don't know, I kind of liked some of his arrogance. That was kind of nice. There was just something holding me back from really liking him. And maybe it's just because I just love the other ones so much, who knows. Now that I'm done, I will be buying The Lost Metal to complete my collection of Era 2. I think it comes out in October. I want to say October 12th of this year. So I will be picking that up. I think reading this series has really solidified the fact that I am a Brandon Sanderson fan. I don't want to say super fan yet. I don't think I can officially say that because I've just started my journey, but I am definitely in my Brandon Sanderson era. As you can tell, because I'm like collecting all the books now. I have plans. I'm making plans to read a bunch of his other books. I am just so excited. I'm so excited. I am in my Sanderson era for sure. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this Mistborn Era 2 reading vlog. It was a lot of fun, and I will see you in the next video.